States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Kluwer. Here. Councilmember Redmond is absent. Councilmember Collins.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns.
Here.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here. All right, item number 3 is special presentations. We have none. So we move straight into public comment. This is where members in the hall audience speak first, and then we'll go to Zoom for items not listed on the agenda following the consent agenda. So, in the hall, do we have anyone who would like to speak for 3 minutes? Come on up, state your name and what city you reside in.
Hello, my name is James McIntyre, and I reside in Mount Shasta, California. For those of you who may or may not know me, I am also currently the building official for the city of Mount Shasta. And that's what I would like to discuss today. So like I said, my name is James, and I am the current building official of the city of Mount Shasta. We have had some changes that have been going on in the building department, and I had some questions, and I brought those to the city manager, and I was directed to the city planner. And some of those changes were things of going digital, et cetera, and I was told that these were being driven by the city council. So I figured that if there's changes being driven by the city council, I would discuss my concerns with those. So I brought that to the planner, and we discussed, you know, issues that had come up, and you know, he told me that I needed to start carrying a city cell phone, that I needed to have counter hours, that I needed to be here from a certain time to a certain time. I explained to him that that wasn't possible in the current contract. He told me that the current contract was null and void, even though it has an auto renew every July. If there's no changes to it, it auto renews. He told me that I needed to that I wasn't fulfilling my contract hours when there's no hours listed in the said contract. So then he told me that I was a customer service agent, and I told him that I was not a customer service agent, that I did provide a service to our customers, but I am not a customer service agent. After our conversation later that evening, I received a 60-day termination notice of my said contract. And when I inquired about that contract, I was told that there was several complaints, which, I mean, I have talked to the city manager about a couple things, but other than that, and one of those complaints that I was told was that I don't pack a cell phone. Well, I carry a cell phone every day. The city manager, the city clerk, any of the city, you know, Ken Kellogg, the Public Works Director, anybody calls me, they call me all day, all night, anytime, I always answer my phone. Are the customers, can they reach out to me 24/7? No. They can schedule a time to meet with me. We have pre-construction meetings. We have all types of things to facilitate their questions, but for them to contact me whenever, I don't only work in Mount Shasta, so my time is up. But I have other concerns, and I can email you with those as well.
Okay, you should do that. Thank you, James.
Yep,
appreciate
no problem.
it. Yep. We have one other member in the audience who does want to speak, so name and city of residence, please.
Hi, my name is Cody Kluwer. I currently reside on 717 Mountain Oak Drive in Mount Shasta City. I'm a local contractor that employs on average 15 employees. During 2023 alone, my company was responsible for 3 homes and 12 units within Mount Shasta, 3 of which are subsidized housing. I currently have approximately 15 units and several homes to construct in my 2-year forecast. Building inspectors are an essential part of my job in making sure my builds are not only on schedule, but up to code and safety standards as well. I have worked with countless building officials over the years, and James McIntyre has proven to be not only responsive and knowledgeable when needed, but fair and precise in all dealings with building in the city of Mount Shasta. When I heard that his contract had been terminated, I couldn't understand why such a valuable part of our community could be tossed aside so easily. I understand that cities operate with their own set of politics, just like any entity would. However, I hope you can understand how this decision affects the building and development of Mount Shasta. One of the largest appeals of living and working in a small town is the sense of community you build with working together with locals. And when that is tossed aside to either bringing someone in who isn't a local or knows what they are doing sets a bad precedence. I have seen James outside of work, at dinner, at social events, or even answering my own questions while we coach football together. Act with patience and gratitude to all that need his help. He is giving up his own time without question. Community to me is building relationships with the people around us, giving countless hours back with no need for acknowledgement or compensation. If I didn't care about this community, I would go live in San Francisco and make 5 times the income. I ask that the council make an agenda item to review James's contract and give him his fair shot at remaining our local building official. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cody. And we had a third person walk in. Would you like to speak here in public comment on non-agenda items? No? Thank you. Okay. And so we go to Zoom land, and no hands raised there, so we'll end public comment now. Move on to staff and council comments. We'll start with the city manager.
Okay. So to start with, I know a lot of people are wondering what's going on with the old hospital. So, you know, rightfully so, a resident up there made a complaint to the California Air Resources Board that during the fire there may have been the aerosolization of asbestos into the air, and it's, you know, and not blaming that person for making that complaint, it's a valid concern. What it has done is it's put off the time in which we can actually clean up that site until we get the go-ahead from CARB. And, you know, we have a certified asbestos removal person ready to go. We are putting in a fire hydrant in the location to keep that pile wet, which is required by the state and CARB in their direction, as well as the county's direction. And we're, again, just waiting until we get the okay for us to move forward. But it's that complaint has kind of put us off for probably a month before we get it cleaned up, but it's imminent. So that's one. Two, the ongoing negotiations with One Shasta, and you know, if you may recall, they have agreed to deed the tank site and easements to the city. The issue is over the water, and there are restrictions on the deed to how that water can be used. They're okay with us using the water for our needs into the future, but they would like to retain what they believe are their water rights, and that they are actually well rights. So I retained Somack, Simmons & Dunn, a water rights law firm out of Sacramento, and they've produced their initial read on this, and I have a meeting with Somack, Simmons & Dunn and the owners of One Shasta tomorrow at 11:30, and hopefully we can come to a resolution finally on this. And I guess finally, there's a lot of stuff going on, but I think the big thing is the library expansion. We applied for a library expansion grant through the state, and the cities that were awarded grants, not us, it seemed to be bigger municipalities, And we were all told, hey, we've all got great applications, we're in the pipeline. When the next opportunity comes, they're going to be pulling from that list that's already in. They're not opening it again for new applications. But what's happened with the Sacramento budget crisis or deficit is they've actually clawed back all the award money they provided in the first round. So that may just be on hold for a couple of years if it's going to continue at all. And in the meantime, when the Library Expansion Committee met, we looked at a proposal from a local team as well as a company called Nolan Tam out of Berkeley that specializes in municipal spaces, especially libraries. And the decision was made by that committee to hire Nolan Tam for one portion of their proposal, which is rescoping and public outreach, and they've come back with a more specific scope, and it's $7,000 more than what they originally proposed, and part of it is the need to digitize PDF documents from the original build, and just increases in cost. So we're moving forward with that piece. We're just trying to get a time when Nolan Tam can get up here not only to meet with the Library Expansion Committee, but also for us to take the time to hold public outreach so we get comments on, what the current take is on what they would like to see in the library. And then for them to produce, very rudimentary, to provide scoping, an analysis of the public outreach, and also to provide, preliminary plans for, the expansion. And so we're just trying to figure out those dates right now.
All right, so how about you, Muriel? You want to speak at this point?
Sure, Mayor and Council, I'd love to. Working my way through the 24-25 budget, I've got it will certainly be ready by the 60-day window that you've asked for. All of the department heads got me their information by the end of last week. So I'm working through that diligently to get that done for you. We have our audit going on right now as well. He will be here Thursday and Friday for some field work. We have a meeting of the Finance Committee on Thursday afternoon at 3:30, where we will be looking at some new accounting software as well as software for business licenses and permits and utility billing and all of those sorts of things that will be cloud-based and all integrated together. So we'll be meeting with the Finance Committee as well as the representative from Springbrook, who is the software that we're looking at. So that's, I think, everything. I'm not sure, but anyway.
Thank you for the updates, Muriel. Really appreciate it. And then, Chief, how about you?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just want to take a moment here to recognize Kelsey Mathwig, who will be completing her last week with us. On Tuesday will be her last day. She's moving on to bigger, better things, and she's been with the department for 1.5 years. She's done a really good job as our dispatcher, and I wish her luck in her new position with the Sheriff's Department. Yes, she's going to the Sheriff's Dispatch.
Okay, thanks for the update, and we wish her well, in her future career move. All right, so moving on to, no, I want to stick with this. I'm going to report back on a little research I did regarding the situation with Mr. Neff and his problems at Alder Gardens Apartments. So I did respond to Mr. Neff's emails regarding possible discriminatory behavior actions towards him. And I said, okay, I'm gonna do these 4 things, to boom. And one of them was to go visit Alder Gardens, his apartment, and the Alder Gardens management, talk with staff about city code regarding tenant landlord relations and long-term rental code that we, regulations regarding those type of buildings. We know we have very detailed code on, for instance, short-term rentals that we just passed. From what I can tell, we don't on long-term rentals. So nobody's pointed me in a direction, and anyhow, the idea there was to find out whether we have jurisdiction over this situation. And then talk to Todd, too. So I've done all those things. So with respect to visiting the apartment, turns out that all the complaints that Mr. Neff had are being rectified this week. So Brenda, who's the manager of Alder Gardens apartment, took me on a tour of his living room area, and a window that was replaced months ago. This has been 3/4 of a year, something that started back in the rainy season last year. Near the end of the rainy season, his window had leaks, and it messed up the walls and the carpeting. A window was put in by a local contractor, not Cascade, but a local building construction type contractor. His name was Don G. I forget his full name. But anyhow, I saw the window. It's there. However, it apparently has some problems because southerly winds blew rain onto it recently, and it caused some more flooding issues. The apartment complex has set up a repair program for this week. I saw that all the damaged wallboard was down. I saw how they were probably going to caulk or put up flashing and whatnot to prevent the window from leaking. So the wall itself and the window are going to be made whole, and the carpet is going to be completely replaced. Mr. Neff is out somewhere else, staying with some friend at no cost to himself or the apartment complex. If he did need space, Alder Gardens would have paid for it. So the primary problem, having a uninhabitable living condition, is going to be rectified this week. So that issue is resolved. The only interesting thing is that it's taken several months, and maybe that's too long, but it sounds like to me, Alder Garden Apartments has been responsive to Mr. Neff's needs, and are certainly now definitely taking care of the situation. So that's good. It appears that jurisdictionally speaking, since this is health-related, the county health department, also known as environmental services, I believe, sent Rick Florendo to administer to the situation, and he actually closed the file on this when the window was initially installed. The new window was initially installed. So from jurisdictional standpoint, it appears to me that the county is responsible for making sure he has decent living conditions or habitable living conditions. And Rick Florendo seems to think that that's the case. So that leaves the possible issue of discriminatory behavior by the city manager. And that doesn't make any sense whatsoever for a couple reasons. One, it appears that we have no regulatory responsibility for the tenant-landlord relations in this situation, and for the maintenance issues regarding this long-term rental apartment. To the extent other agencies do, it would appear quite obviously that it's the county environmental services. And since it's HUD housing, it's federal. That federal agency has responsibility. I'm assuming that they would subcontract that down to the county for something of this scale. So apparently it's completely HUD housing, the whole apartment complex. So it's, how shall we say, subsidized housing, and the federal government is involved. it's inconceivable to me how you can be considered discriminatory when you don't have any obligation to help somebody to begin with. So to me, it's a complete non-starter. He says we're being discriminatory, the city manager's being discriminatory, but if the city manager helped at all, which he did, discussing the situation with Mr. Neff, making some recommendations, and so forth, apparently for months, he was going above and beyond the call of duty. Secondly, our city manager and myself did not know this person had any handicap, because that's what he's claiming. He has some sort of handicap. I now know what that was, and I won't reveal that, but again, non-starter. No one knew he had a handicap in any way, so how could you be discriminatory? I'll leave the discussion at that. I think that Todd is right and actually stopping staff from working on this project anymore, working on this issue anymore, and I don't think we as a council should pursue this. If you want to, as a private citizen, feel free, but I don't advise it.
If I may.
Yeah.
Following up on that, I agree with everything that you said. The city did not have jurisdiction or responsibility for this situation. It is a classic landlord-tenant situation.
Right.
Mr. Neff did contact Legal Services of Northern California back in October. I don't understand. They wrote a very good letter to Alder Gardens. I'm not sure that there was any follow-up or why there wasn't any follow-up, but it is a sort of thing that a tenant can go into court on and seek relief. For whatever reason, Mr. Neff did not pursue those avenues that were available to him that would have
Shall
been
we say
effective.
normal avenues for tenant
Right.
relief, right?
Yeah.
So I'm left with saying that there is nothing more to be done on part of city staff and city council persons, as city council persons. If you want to get involved privately, please do so as a citizen unrelated to the city. And I mean that most sincerely, but even in that regard, I think the living conditions will be nearly as perfect as can be. He's getting a new carpet, and it looks like it'll be a pretty nice place to live. So that's solved. If he wants to file a complaint against Todd for being mean, I will tell him he can do that, but that's going to be the most I say at this point, because I promised a response, so I will respond, and that will be that.
Thank you for taking your time outside of
A little too much time.
outside of your normal day-to-day to see this through and make sure we were doing our due diligence. I just want to make a clarification that if there is a tenant-landlord dispute, is it ever in our jurisdiction to act on their behalf, or have we ever sent that mixed message?
That's a good question. Todd, from a technical standpoint, do you have an answer? And then it looks like, I know Mr. Stearns has one, so you go second. Todd?
You want me to go first? Bottom line, if the city had city-owned property or city-managed property or city-controlled property, then the city might have some sort of responsibility and a reason to get involved. In this case, the city had no responsibility, and the city sought to be helpful to the extent that it could, but it had no power or authority
Or obligation.
So the answer is, in this case, no, not in Mount Shasta.
So maybe we should be careful to get involved with things to avoid wasting lots of times and getting into arguments that then waste even more time where we don't have any jurisdiction. So I think that's one of the lessons learned here. Being nice is okay, but being slightly too nice and helping out when you don't have any obligation to do so can lead to long, in this case, so this was a really long drawn-out process for city staff. For me, it was 5 days. For staff, it was, well over 5 months, maybe upwards of 9 months, somewhere in that range, from 5 to 9 months, that there was involvement by city staff. And that would include city manager, Dan G., right? And I don't know if city planner got involved. Did you get involved? No, okay. But simpler, sometimes simpler is better. And if we don't have to be involved, we shouldn't.
Well, we try to help people.
Yeah.
We try to help our citizens. And sometimes there is that adage of no good deed goes unpunished.
I have a follow-up to my question. I wanted to make sure, because in full transparency, the public commenter earlier is my husband, in case those of you don't know him. In the case of Mr. McIntyre, he's been emailing me some correspondence where that line may have been blurred. So I think it's very important that we are consistent with this message, and I'll be bringing this up later for future agenda items, but that's my point on that.
Right, and we can discuss as a future agenda item whether we want to open up the possibility of regulating long-term rentals. I'm not sure we're ready for that, and I don't know if we have the time. I would just like people's thoughts as to yes or no, and I'm not going to say yes, I won't take the staff that the mayor has the power to just put it as a future agenda item. I really want to know what people think about it.
If I may,
Yeah.
there are clearly defined statutes and regulations governing landlord-tenant situations like
At the
this.
state level.
Yes. And we should leave it at the state level.
So don't even bother
and the
bringing it up in
county
future
level,
agenda items?
And with
Okay.
the courts.
All right.
So if I can
ahead.
add to that really quickly, there, if there are health and safety code violations, the county is supposed to respond. If there are building code violations, we go out and we take a look at the habitability of that, of whatever structure that is. In this case, I didn't really know for a while this was going on, but the code enforcement officer spent 8 months with this person with the complaints, and then talking to rental management, and they responded in every instance very quickly to the satisfaction of code enforcement and to the adage of no good deed goes unpunished. There was near the end of this where our code enforcement officer came to me and said, there's nothing else that we can do for this person. I am satisfied that management has responded and will continue to respond quickly to the complaints. And then the number of email bombardments got to the point where I said I'm no longer willing to respond. And that's where it ended. And
Okay, well, this is interesting. So to Tessa's point, this is where involvement in a long-term rental situation might and probably is appropriate if it's a building code structure violation. And so whether we need to reiterate that or clarify it through a future agenda item, we can discuss later.
For short-term rental or long-term rental, if there's a building code violation, the city can have responsibility or authority. But that's different than this. There's well-defined landlord-tenant law. The tenant could have perhaps withheld rent. The tenant could have gone to court, sought mandatory relief, various things that could have been done, and would have been much more effective and faster than trying to work through the city.
Chief.
I just want to reiterate that the person in this case was told many times of his civil options, of going to court, of contacting HUD, of the county is the one responsible, and look at HUD because you're HUD-huzzing. Did not like the answer wouldn't take yes for an answer and wanted us to get involved, even after being told, we're not involved, we got nothing more. These are your avenues. Look for a lawyer, look for a lawsuit. Some of his emails were, I don't want to do a lawsuit, I want you guys to do it. That's not our job. So he was clearly told on multiple occasions that exactly what Councilmember Stearns was saying, there is tons of law on landlord civil tenant disputes. You have your civil options, you have your HUD investigation because you're HUD housing, and you have the county health. And he didn't like those answers, so continued coming back to the city.
And all the time, you did not know he had a disability, correct?
Never met him.
Okay, and I didn't know until he explicitly said it in his last email, so I just don't think that's an issue at all. So very good. Let's move on to committee updates, if there are any. Mr. Huaz?
Yes, so DEAC met. They reviewed a number of submissions from professionals, from tattoo artists, from regular artists, from school kids, and they have picked a number of pieces that they like. In fact, there were enough that they did like that they're talking about creating a collage on a number of these Powerbox arts from these works. So that took up much of the discussion, and the next part of the discussion is the ongoing issue of how they get a slab laid for this Flower of Life statue. It's a heavy piece. Where it's going to rest is a large concrete plinth, and they had someone who had volunteered to actually lay this plinth down and did some research on the piece of art, and something about the piece of art that's undisclosed conflicted with the volunteers' religious beliefs, so we're back out looking for somebody that can put that plinth in place.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, very good, thank you. Kathy, before I read the consent agenda item, are we up to ordinance number?
Yes, and item D would be CCO-24-02.
Got it, that's good, yep. 03. All right, consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, January 8th and 22nd, 2023, regular meetings, January 22nd, 2023, special meeting. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable, January 24th and January 30th, 2024. Total gross payroll and taxes for period ending January 21st, 2024. C, police department report, January 2024. D, second reading and adoption of ordinance CCO-24-02, amending municipal code, chapter 7.60.010, designation of very high fire hazard severity zones. E, second reading and adoption of ordinance CCO-24-03, city council compensation. F, annual military equipment use report 2023.
Mr. Mayor, I request that item 7A be split into separate votes because I was not present on the January 22nd meeting.
Okay, so let's have a motion for, you weren't here for the 8th?
I was here for the 8th. I was not for the January
22nd.
22nd special meeting or regular meeting.
Let's move.
To the chair?
Yeah.
I wasn't here either, so we won't have consensus for that.
So we want to just redo A?
Yeah, there was a quorum here for the 8th, correct? And then I can move the minutes from the 22nd to the next.
So we need the 3 that were present to put on that. So then today, A will be amended to just be January 8th.
Yes.
All right, quick reread. Consent agenda item A will read as follows: approval of minutes for January 8th, 2023. Second, can we get a motion for that?
Sorry, one more. That should be January 2024 typo.
One more time. Reread of a consent agenda item A, approval of minutes, January 8th for 2024.
I'll second that.
Now we have to move. We need to move.
Oh,
Yeah, I will second that.
Second the change, good. Okay, so fine, on the consent agenda as a whole.
I will make a motion for items 7B through F by title only.
7A as amended.
A as amended
And B through F?
B through F by title only.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right. So I look forward to the next consent agenda item going a lot more smoothly. All right, let's get to the big item of the night. Item number 8, approval of the updated stormwater rate study and the notice of public hearing for proposed drainage assessment. And for the background on this, city manager will have the floor.
Sure. So this is an update on the stormwater drainage impact report that was adopted or accepted a number of months ago. There is no change in the rate structure for equivalent residential units. This is bringing it back with just the understanding of when this is going out to a mail ballot. So it's one, it's the approval of the updated report, and two, it is a recommendation from council to go to a 45-day mailing that is asking for public comments, where after those public comments over those 45 days are collected, we then hold a public hearing. Take the comments from those public hearings and then move forward with mailing a ballot with any adjustments that council may or may not want to make at that point. That 45-day mailing after the first public hearing, this is post 45-day comments, a ballot will be mailed out for an additional 45 days of consideration. After that 45 days of consideration, we hold a second public hearing where votes are counted at that public hearing, and the results of whether or not the drainage fee is adopted, will be made. And there was a comment from a member of the public about, listing the projects that were the assumptions behind this fee, so we can ensure that what we're charging is in line with what our actual costs are. It is outlined in this report in section 2.2, section 2.2.1, really quickly, it doesn't list every project, but it goes into the largest project, Cold Creek Realignment and Restoration, multi-phase project, and it lists other projects as well as 20% reserve, and the idea that we will then have money available for any emergencies or cost overruns, which is typically the case. The public commenter was stating a portion of state code that says that we're doing this illegally, and essentially checked with our city attorney and Raftelis, who are experts in drainage impact fees, including in California. They did their research on this, and we're doing this exactly as expected. Do know that once we have the 45-day public comment period before we go out on a ballot, we'll be listing the projects, because that's part of how you actually attempt to sell a ballot. But what you have before you to go out to public comment is proper, and we're in line with state law.
All right, thank you, Todd. Clarification, questions? Tim? None. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
City Manager, just to help me understand, when we went through the 218 process with sewer and water, and then went out for public comment, and ended up passing it in City Council, the public voting on it was they had to come up with 50% plus one of people who disagreed with it. Is that correct? This seems to be the opposite, where the voting process is you just tell us if you're for or against it.
Correct.
And is there some reason why that process is different for this particular 218 stormwater process versus water and sewer?
So I can't get into the specifics of it. It's very complicated. Yeah, there is a state Supreme Court case, actually competing state Supreme Court cases, in the way that we're following the mail-in ballot is being the most conservative and assuming that everything, passes in such. So this requires us to be more careful and count our ballots in public. It's just different. This is just following the most conservative path, assuming that in the two competing Supreme Court cases that it isn't resolved, or it's resolved in a negative light. So we're making sure we're covering our bases.
Thank you. May I have another question? Yeah. If the earlier process of the public voting in the water and sewer arena, voting for an exception to the 218 rates that we had approved, in this case, they're going to vote to approve the 218 and have to come up with 50 plus one, 50% plus one that want to approve it. Am I correct in having a feeling that this puts a significantly different burden on the city to communicate very clearly why the city wants to put their hand in the pockets of approximately 2,000 accounts and take an extra 20, 25 bucks a month out? And oh, by the way, it's up to you to decide whether you want this or not. Does it seem like we should, unlike the previous water and sewer areas, we should undertake an educational campaign to say what it is this money is really going for?
Very leading question. Absolutely. That point is taken. So when the ballot, so remember, I guess, excuse me, let me back up. So what you're really asking me, I think, is that typically when you ask people whether they want to be taxed, and you are sending out a mail-in ballot, you're more likely to get negative responses than you are to get positive responses. And that is the case, I would assume. Again, remember that when we are counting the ballots in person, it's a majority of the ballots that come back that are going to win the day, even if that's 4 ballots or 5 ballots, and 3 of them are yes, or 3 are no. So yes, when it comes down to the point of mailing out that ballot, we need to make sure that we're leading and making it very clear why it is that we're looking for this drainage impact fee to be passed, not only in the type of projects, but to include the state of our drainage infrastructure now and how dire it is, and why charging $1 has been solely and woefully insufficient, leading to a yawning chasm of need of crumbling infrastructure. But yes, we need to make that point when the ballot goes out in what projects are going to be included in this and why they're important.
I apologize, but may I have one more question?
That's it, 3 strikes, go.
Yeah, this is clearly my last one, for now. Has there been a change in the legal milieu that has the city change its balloting approval process from previous efforts, like water and sewer, where it's an exception vote versus this one where it's an approval vote? What has changed? Wait a minute, it's a two-parter.
The question is whether it's just for drainage that we have to do this, or if it's still a negative for the water and sewer.
But the two parts were, has the legal milieu changed, the landscape changed, and
Yes.
and do we have an option to go back to the other way that we did water and wastewater?
Not without legal jeopardy, because we're still waiting for these 2 competing Supreme Court decisions. What the crux of the 2 cases are relate to water and sewer are a necessity, and what's floating around is drainage infrastructure a necessity, or is it an impact fee, or is it an assessment? So it goes down a rabbit hole, and right now we're in the middle of not knowing where we should land, so we're stuck with the burden of, I guess a higher level of proof or
Affirmation.
information to be provided to the public of why this is absolutely necessary.
Well, I said affirmation. You want the public to affirm that they want this. Does this mean, and I don't think it does, that future water and sewer rate increases will
Different.
they'll still be negative?
They'll still be 218.
Okay. All right, so that's critical because there's going to be, Pace will be coming to us, I'm sure,
Yes.
saying that there are sewer monies available, but they don't cover this part
The
of
the
town's
match,
collection
yeah.
system, and we need to up the rate. Likewise with water, the next big project after the one on the south side of town will be to build the water tank with cooperation from One Shasta. I can't remember, did we cover that with a rate increase? Can you remember? I can't remember. We might have said, okay, the rate increase should be this to cover the improvements that were made, like around Pine Street, the improvements that are going to be made this summer, Orem and other places. I just can't remember positively if we included the cost of building that water tank, and I'm just not sure. But anyhow, they're going to come to us with a rate increase, and it's going to be a negative vote, so that's good.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Through the chair, can Finance Director add any comments, clarifying comments?
The clarifying comment is water and sewer are exempt from the processes that we're having to go through for the stormwater. They're exempt.
And stormwater isn't?
That is correct.
Okay, so Tessa doesn't want to chime in. We will go to, is this going to require a public hearing? Public comment period on item number 7. And we have two people in the audience. Would they like to come up and talk on this subject?
Yes.
Pardon me, item 8. No, we don't have any takers inside. Nope. Okay. Zoom no? No. Peggy's not there. Well, I'm going to count to 3. 3, 2, 1. That's it. Public comment on item number 8 is closed. Bring it back to council for further discussion. Jeff looks like he's ready to go.
Well, let me go last.
Okay, it's fine. Tim looks like he's ready for something.
I move that council approve the revised stormwater drainage impact fee report and direct staff to mail a notice of public hearing, which requires a 45-day public comment period.
I'll second.
Would you like to comment before you vote?
That's why you should go first, Jeffrey.
We've been through a lot of meetings discussing this and the need for the funds that $1 a month per account laughingly doesn't cover. I did not know that this was not a 218 process leading to a voting like.
It's a 218,
It is a 218 process, but not a voting process like water and sewer. I did not know that. And I just wanted to personally address my perspective on why I will vote for this to raise my bill in this town, because we've had many meetings to discuss in great detail what the drainage fee means, how wetlands are impacted, how good environmental stewards and just basic maintenance of our separate stormwater versus what's called a sanitary sewer, the wastewater, separate sewer lines. We are maintaining the former, but not the latter, if I got that right. And we simply must. And for lack of being unprepared to give a laundry list of the things that really desperately need to be addressed, I will stop talking, but I'll be back.
To the chair. I just wanted to tangent off of that and say I think we're right at that line of being proactive before major issues happen with our current drainage system, and then we'll have to be reactive to all of the problems that will happen. So yes, very important.
Well said, and I'll say that actually we're a little late. I was talking with John Zanni, and we talked about how Cold Creek, which is a culvert underneath his driveway on Mount Shasta Boulevard, actually caused a big maintenance problem for us now maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, where they were digging, Public Works was digging by his driveway to fix what the Cold Creek culvert had damaged, which included water and possibly sewer pipes. There'll be more of that if we don't address this system. So with that said, we have a motion by Stearns, a second by Clore. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, 4-0 vote. We move on to number 9. Also important, sort of a preliminary step for some of the big plans we have here in Mount Shasta. Proposed option on 2 properties for the purpose of performing an environmental assessment. Again, the city manager will give the background on this. Todd, you have the floor.
Okay. If you may recall, a month back, I brought a similar proposal for for taking over a lease for 6 months for a property. I have the wrong property address in here. It should read 415 North Chestnut and 2 adjoining parcels in the original report, and in this report, the APN's assessor's parcel numbers are correct. The original proposal with the owner is to take over the structure for 6 months while we do environmental due diligence and we do an appraisal on the property. The owner has come back and says that he has a potential long-term lessee for 5 years. That may or may not pan out. So if that doesn't pan out, there is an alternate proposal to take over the lease for 2 unpaved parking lots at this location, while we do the same environmental due diligence and appraisal with the intent to purchase, either one of these would still be in effect. We haven't heard from the owner on which way they want to go. This would start on March 1st and give us 6 months where, again, we would have an appraisal, a commercial appraisal done on the property. We have a commercial appraiser lined up, as well as environmental due diligence. If we are just going with the 2 unpaved parcels, the rent would be $900 a month. The original rent for the structure and the unpaved parking lots and the paved parking lots was for $2,850 a month. In the case of if we go with the 2, I know this gets confusing, the 2 unpaved parcels, it is more of a sure bet because it is currently used as a parking lot, and the intended use is for a parking lot. So when we do our environmental due diligence, unless there's some condition where there is seepage from the property to adjoining properties, if we're using it for the, again, for parking, there really is no change of use, so there would be no significant impact. So looking for approval for leasing for 6 months, 415 Chestnut, the 2 unpaved parking lots for $900 a month.
All right, so it's 415 Chestnut when it comes time to move on this. 415 Chestnut Street. There was a citizen very concerned that we have this correct, and I don't blame him for making mention of it, so let's move forward. Clarification questions over here on this side?
No.
Our lease is already in motion with the building itself, correct?
I'm sorry, one more time?
Are we in lease under the building? Didn't we vote on this a few weeks ago for the building piece of this, or is this?
We're not. The current lessee is picking up February, so this would start March 1st, and we want to make sure we get that person off the hook. The owner just hasn't determined whether this new long-term lessee is going to work out, and
Okay. Thank you.
And now we'll have 2 options.
So this is a proposed lease agreement, but do you feel as if it will be accepted by Burnell?
The 2 unpaved lots,
Yeah.
for sure, yes.
All right.
And potentially the structure and the unpaved lots, he is supposed to have it.
All right, so that might require a separate lease or an overall lease that changes.
We approved that lease
So
version
that's, yeah,
last month, so
so it's there.
yeah.
All right, so this is limiting a limited lease possibility that you feel is will be signed. Almost
Yes.
certainly. Go ahead.
Just one question. We clearly have the intent, past leasing this property
Yes.
for 6 months, to purchase it, which entails an appraisal that hasn't occurred. Am I correct in saying that you had somebody that you could get within a couple of months to come and appraise it?
Yes. And that's probably TMI, but I'm going to share it. Typically, when I called around for commercial appraisers, the wait time is more than a year. It just happens we have a retired appraiser up here with the commercial stamp that has an interest in daylighting of Castle Creek and our big plans there, and is willing to take it on, of course, to be paid, but has the stamp that we need, and it's clearly spelled out with the owner that for us, the city, to purchase under either scenario, purchase the property, it has to be at the appraised value of it, because for us to be able to chase grants to pay for it.
Thank you.
Public comment on this, right? Okay. So we'll open this up to public comment. Again, we have 2 participants in the audience. Would either one like to come up and speak about this issue? No? All right. right, not interested, and we move on to Zoom land. No. Easy meeting tonight. All right, back to council for further discussion or motion.
To the chair.
Okay, go, Jeff.
Just to make a position that has evolved with me with this parking lot, which originally included the entire structure in the building, the full, all 3 lots. And now with the separation out, or at least potential separation out of just the 2 lots, I just wanted to make clear and bring up to the other council members that whether there's a daylighting of Castle Creek or not, I think it's a good idea that we get available parking relative to long-term growth in town when we would look back and go, boy, it sure would have been nice if we could have had that little piece for parking as well. I just wanted to make sure.
So when I introduced the idea of pursuing more aggressively the potential parking lot at Alma and Shasta Boulevard,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Buy it right now.
All right. Tim?
Regarding the matter that's before us, I move that the City Council approve the lease for the 2 APNs indicated on pages 76 through 81, with a clarification or correction that the address is 415 Chestnut Street, and authorize city manager or mayor to enter into the lease agreement.
Well said. Thank you.
Second as amended?
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, we passed that item and we move on to, and I will do this very briefly, future outside meetings. So I had a meeting of the Collier Interpretive and Information Center on the Tuesday after our last meeting. It was pretty routine. In the 2-month period from the end of November, December, had negative operational income, net income, about $2,000 plus. I don't know if that's a worry quite yet. I'll look into it at the next meeting. Outside of that, pretty routine meeting, except that there was clarification about this nature walk that the actual path is there. You can park and go down this trail down by the river. I've walked part of it. But there's going to be this really interesting signage put out that is supposedly going to withstand sun, rain, wind, snow, and so forth. Sort of this enamel type of signage that is for these type of trails, outdoor trails, with bad weather and strong sun. So that's going to be a $40,000 project. So that's not going to happen without grants. That's where we are on that item at the Collier Interpretive and Information Center. So with that said, I'll move on to future agenda items.
Mayor, did you want to talk about the Lola meeting?
Well, I totally forgot about the Lola meeting because it wasn't particularly eventful. But anyhow, I had to leave early, so we had dinner, and I went through all the wonderful things happening in Mount Shasta, particularly our rather substantial investment in public infrastructure projects that are actually finishing, continuing, or pending. So we talked about a lot of that tonight. I talked about private-public sector joint efforts, such as what's going on with One Shasta and possibly at the landing. And then I went over our somewhat weak private sector movements. I would like to see much more. Instead of having just 3 businesses started up in a month, I'd like to see more like 10 to 20, like it was a couple of years ago, and less vacancy. So hopefully we're not having too much of a recession here in Mount Shasta, and I ended with my thoughts that, I'm still very bullish on Mount Shasta, so I think private sector will turn around, but we'll see what happens. Unless there's something great going on after that, go ahead, Tim or Jeff.
Well, maybe Councilmember Collins can say something. If I can just say something quickly, the City Selection Committee, which is composed of the 9 mayors of the 9 incorporated cities, did have a meeting in advance of Lola.
In advance of Lola, and Tim was placed on as the alternate for LAFCO because the current alternate moved up to a full position.
Right.
So that's the one main thing pertaining to our council that there was.
I got nothing.
Didn't COPSEF tell you all about something?
There is another fact, and that is that City of Mount Shasta has been chosen to host the April Lola meeting.
Oh, wait a minute. Was that confirmed? Yeah?
Yes.
I was wondering if we were going to do this. 2 South County cities in a row.
Yes.
Where were we going to do it?
Here?
I think that we will leave that to the discretion of the deputy city clerk.
So we did it once at Pipeline, and where else have we done that? Here. Oh, yeah, we've done it here a couple times, right?
I actually got word from the Weed City Clerk today that I was volunteered for this project, so I've already begun looking into caterers.
Done? No? All right. Future agenda items. There's a lot of TBDs on here, but can I just assume, Todd, that the memorandum for the Friends of, that's coming up soon, maybe the next meeting?
We have one line that's under dispute, and I just might make an executive decision on that, so that's pending very soon.
Okay, so the downtown district's coming near the end of the snowy season. We've had a very light snow removal season, very light. So this one maybe TBD, sure, we want to wait till the summer, but let's obviously get it done well before winter starts again next year, next season. Fiscal year 20, well, that, we already talked about that with Muriel. She said when she's going to have that ready, so that's good. The boundaries, I'm working with Todd to get the parcel numbers, and then we'll see that, hopefully within the month of March. City manager, I don't know, I kind of hinted to Todd, more than hinted, that we can get around to that when we kind of know what the end of fiscal 23 is. We don't really have that final number, and we're not 100% sure where we're headed this year. But it's good to make decisions, fiscal decisions, based on fiscal numbers that are concluded or conclusive versus in doubt. All right, Washington, that can remain TBD. Hopefully that'll come down soon. Parklet ordinance, okay, yeah. I guess I'm feeling a little urgent about the downtown enhancement and beautification projects and completion of those projects. But again, until we know our fiscal condition, it's hard to run aggressively at things like this, except I have a feeling, particularly with the DEAC people, that they say, well, there's money there. It's our fund, should be available to spend now, so let's just get to it. It's hard to argue with that. And so let's move on to other items. I think Tessa's going to introduce one. I just have a feeling. Go ahead.
Yes. In regards to James McIntyre, who spoke today, I want to start by saying that we as a council give direction to city manager, and the city manager makes personnel decisions throughout the city. And while I would personally love to keep James around, that's not my decision, and I don't intend to manipulate that. What I would like to say is, I think there's a little confusion between what was brought to him as council directive that might need further clarification in regards to these electronic documents that doesn't ring a bell to me. And the emails in correspondence that were sent to me, there's enough that just doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy, and I would like us as a council to review and give him the opportunity to discuss. And I see another contractor in the audience. I'm assuming that's what that's about. We have an unfortunate bad reputation of being closed for business and building in Mount Shasta, and that is a huge passion of mine to not go down that road, particularly with our local community. So I would love an agenda item to hear this out, and that's that.
Go ahead.
Don't think the city council has any authority over the matter, because when we switched from having a city administrator, city council type of government to a city manager, city council type of government, we specifically gave all hiring and termination authority, all personnel authority to the city manager. Prior to that, when we had a city administrator, city council form of government, city council did have input into personnel decisions. That changed several years ago when we switched over to the city manager form of government. So personnel decisions are exclusively within the power, authority, and jurisdiction of the city manager.
Did you hear my opening part? I know that.
Okay.
Okay, so what you're requesting is review of his performance independent of the city manager's decision or decisions regarding?
I would like to review and make sure that the termination is transparent and on the up and up.
It's a city manager role.
Yeah, I would agree that.
And that's confirmed by John Kenny.
Not a council member, not a council action. That is a city manager jurisdictional line between city manager.
So what you're saying is we, the council, hires the city manager.
Right.
And once that is complete, the direct hiring and termination, disciplining of employees is certainly within city manager's realm of responsibility. Exclusively. And that with respect to contracts, because this guy's a contractor.
This is an independent contractor.
Is it the same?
Again, it is the city manager that enters into the contracts, not city council.
Well, sometimes.
Depending upon the type of contract.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we get involved in contracts, but not when it involves personnel
So
like this.
again, this is my request. You may approve or deny, but that is my request.
Well, it's on me then, huh? What do we do? What do you want us to do since it's apparently not our prerogative here to even bring this up anymore? I'm not quite, where does it lead, Tessa?
So in some of the correspondence, it appears that there may be some inconsistencies with how this was handled, and I want to be sure that we have our ducks in a row. But if that's done via email outside, that's
So
fine.
here's a problem I have, is what we're really investigating is the city manager then. And that's the nut, right? So we would be investigating, questioning, reviewing his process of deciding to terminate this contract. That we do have authority over, no?
The city council has authority to review city manager's performance. We did that just recently.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we couldn't take it up at some other point, but in terms of any action that the city manager takes with personnel, we don't have any authority to intervene, to overrule, to second guess the city manager. We lost that authority when we switched from city administrator type of government to city manager type of government.
I just ask that we be careful with terms like personnel in regards to this, because this is not an employee we're dealing with. So anytime we say personnel, that opens up a different ballgame.
Okay, I'm going to suspend this, meaning that I'm going to look into it a little bit more. It seems to me that if we do this public, right, public, you want this in the public, it becomes a critique of the city manager and his methodologies regarding handling of a contractor. And I'm hearing from people who are technically way more proficient than me, Tim in particular, that in itself may be inappropriate.
Yes, if it's a personnel matter involving the city manager, that would be done in closed session, not public session.
Okay, so. Recusal?
Because he makes me so much money. I'm friends with a lot of people in this town.
Your listed relationship with, your mentioned relationship with the contractor and his relationship with your husband.
Because he's a building inspector?
No,
Because my husband is a contractor?
because you brought up that he's a football coach with your husband.
And that makes me
And you-
money?
And no, and
So
it's,
recusing is only for when it makes me profit.
that's absolutely not true.
If it has a monetary effect on me.
I would suggest a consultation with the city attorney.
The city manager, because this was contractual, did seek our input on this. And I understand that you and your husband have a fine relationship and a positive relationship with the contractor. The contract employee, no, not employee,
The independent contractor?
Contractor.
the contractor.
He'll get a 1099, not a W-2.
Right. And I just thought I should bring up that he did seek our input, and I understand that you and your husband have had a good relationship, and it isn't a real surprise to me that the builder husband of a city council member gets really good service. That didn't surprise me at
That's
all.
an assumption, Mr. Collins. That's an assumption, that's the reason that he gets good service. He could just be doing a good job.
It is an assumption, totally. It just doesn't surprise me. And when we heard other relationships that weren't that way, those that were present went, our guidance to the city manager was, listen, if this person isn't working out for you, this is your purview.
I understand that is his prerogative. There is also another contractor in the audience that I have never met face-to-face before. So it's not just my husband that was served well.
Well, and look, short of getting it back into a discussion on the merits or the pros or cons relative to the contractor, we had that discussion, and there were many pieces of input that led our city manager to go, I would like to change contractors. And the majority of us went, okay. I understand that like most things in life, there's different ways to look at it, but kind of ultimately, I get back to not about you and your relationship or your husband's relationship or me and what I know, but back to what Councilmember Stern said, that, hey,
All right.
this is his decision.
All right, I'm going to kind of end this now by taking a straw poll. If given the choice of, if it were allowed, so this is very hypothetical, if it were allowed, actually I shouldn't word it that way. I don't really know how this would work, since you can't override the city manager on this one. You can't override. I'm going to drop it then. It doesn't make sense. If we were to meet to override the city manager's decision on this, like if there were the votes to do that, we're going to break state laws and do this. No, Tessa, that's kind of what you're asking to do. What would be the vote? No, no, and I know Redmond's no.
I would very clearly vote, don't have enough information, need more.
Oh, well, then you're maybe. Yeah. I'm trying to end
Conversation
this
from evolving any
Yeah.
further. If you want to really discuss it, it needs to be agendized.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm trying to get a feel for where it's going, but
So I've heard the proposal that we add this to the agenda. I haven't heard any of the other three council members.
no, Redmond was pretty clear. Huh? Redmond was pretty clear, unless you weren't here that day. Redmond was pretty clear, unless you weren't here that day.
I think you may have left by then. Redmond was not in favor of the current contractor.
Oh, no, I'm just saying that I don't hear a second for the proposal to add this to the agenda. And
That's correct. I'm
having
going
not
to
heard that,
withhold.
I think we should move on.
We move on, yeah. So, Tess, I'll have to get back to you on it. Library, Nolan Tam. Okay, so Todd, back, we're going to move on.
Yes.
Okay, so Nolan Tam contract, the one that's $7,000 more.
Yes.
Do we as a council need to approve that contract or not? Feels like we do.
Yes.
Before they start work.
Yes.
So that should be agendized for the next
Yes.
meeting. Okay. Don't need a second on that.
Second.
They got a second anyhow?
Actually, the mayor and/or the city manager can add anything to the
Yeah,
agenda without a
That's right.
second
That's
council
why
member.
I didn't ask for it. That's an important one, and it's got to be done. All right. We hinted at the 40 by 400 foot square, 40 by 400 foot lot at the northwest corner of Alma and Mount Shasta, North Mount Shasta Boulevard, and the city pursuing either a rental or a lease agreement or purchase of that property. Let's have an agenda item that gives direction to council at the next meeting on that item. No, it doesn't, it's still for sale, I think.
Agree.
Yeah, you agree? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Any more agenda items?
Just one.
Okay.
Well, it's adjusting, I think, municipal code to allow a more clear process to clean up vandalism, graffiti in particular, because we can do it on infrastructure like roads, but on buildings and electrical boxes and garbage bins.
Yeah.
It's growing, and I don't think please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's the process for us to have a relationship with either those private property owners, or I'm not sure how that would play out, but I would like.
So in particular, Mr. Collins is referencing the Forest Service, Union Pacific Railroad, Pacific Power, and so forth.
Right.
And whether we can work in conjunction with them to resolve these. And the main culprit is somebody named Gaspy, or the tag he's using is Gaspy. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Short, the great would show some, but maybe he's a literary person.
And it's expanding, and I want to nip this in the bud. I want to stop.
So the agenda item would be to set up a graffiti cleanup program?
Well, to make sure there's a municipal code that defines a relationship such that we could do that.
So because the majority of the complaints about graffiti are about private property, we've cleaned up graffiti on private property, with the property owner's consent in certain cases. But I think the only way for us to approach this is to pass an ordinance about graffiti removal citywide, or or there's code enforcement response.
Good enough? All right, so let's make that an agenda item. I didn't have anything to add. I probably did, but I forgot them. Tessa, do you want any more than the McIntyre issue?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, time to adjourn the meeting. It's currently 6:54 p.m. Without objection, we are concluded.